Welcome to Change the Narrative. I'm your host, JD Fuller, an African-American licensed psychotherapist, professor, diversity coach, consultant, and author. We talk about the isms. We talk about the phobias, anything that marginalizes and oppresses. Everything we are not and everything we are is because of fear. Through a mental health lens, we'll have difficult conversations with celebrity guests, political activists, and everyone in between. Our mind will tell us whatever we want to believe, but the truth lives in the body, and that's where change occurs. Are you ready to change the narrative? Welcome to Change the Narrative. So happy to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you, JG. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So I'd like to know a little bit about your background. And I always try to think of a different way to ask a question about a person's background. This is what I came up with for you. Tell us something about your experience growing up that played a significant role in your life with where you are right now.
Well, my mom was a single parent and she was a nurse. And basically, I saw how hard she studied in school. And that really decided for me that I wanted to go to college.
Okay, so you said your mother was a single mom and a nurse. And
Yes.
the way that manifested was you wanted to go to college.
Yes. And I actually ended up getting a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in analytical chemistry.
Interesting. So that's where the next question comes in, which is, tell us about how chemistry, this whole background. First of all, let me just back up from there. Where did chemistry come from? Did you love it in school? How did you know?
Well, I think, I knew I wanted to get into the medical field at first,
Okay.
and then I didn't want to be a nurse. I didn't want to be a doctor. And then I said, well, maybe pharmacist, thinking I'll be helping people. And then when I actually started working at a pharmacy, I didn't like it. So chemistry was my backup plan.
Got it. Okay. So then can you draw the direct connection from your chemistry background to wellness? Because, let me just say, let me add this. Well, I was going to say, let me just add this to clarify in case that wasn't clear enough. Chemistry seems to go along with pharmaceuticals. So,
Yes.
Right? And that's kind of the opposite of what wellness coaches think is health oriented. So that's what I mean. How did that draw the line to the wellness approach?
Well, when my son was 2 years old, he was diagnosed as being on the spectrum. And I didn't know what that was at the time. And so I started doing research, and then basically the rabbit hole opened up and it got deeper and deeper, if that makes sense. And then just finding out that what the pharmaceutical industry was really about. It's $1 billion industry. It doesn't make, it doesn't make people well. It's only good for keeping people sick. And from there, that's how I got into the wellness spectrum. In 2019, I finished my health and wellness coaching certification. And also, another story with that is probably about 6 years ago now, I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes and high cholesterol. And I didn't want to be on medication because I know with medication, you have side effects, which leads to more medication, more side effects. And so basically just changing my diet and exercise and using supplements at that particular time, I was able to reverse both diagnoses without using these pharmaceuticals.
You just went well in both the directions, but I'm going to slow down because, this is where I'm perplexed for myself. I work out 4 to 5 times a week. I don't think I've been leaner in my life. And basically a vegetarian diet. I don't eat a lot of high fat foods. What else? I've slowed down a lot on the salt intake. And I've been diagnosed with high cholesterol and high blood pressure. Now, not to a serious degree, but you know how doctors are, put you on medication right away. And I've gone the holistic route, and my blood pressure still stays a little bit high. How are you able to do that?
Well, I put the disclaimer out there. I'm not a doctor, so I would say, stress also plays a role also because
Mm.
when I was working on my graduate degree, it was very, very stressful. That's when my blood pressure was starting to become high. And then after I graduated, I noticed that it was running, the bottom number running the 90s and the top number running the 140s. And when I changed jobs, I noticed that it dropped like 40%, by 40 points. So I knew that stress plays a role, and I knew I had to take my health more seriously, because I was in denial at first because I wasn't overweight. I was probably I'm 5'2". I was probably at that time maybe 120 pounds.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
really was like, okay, why do I have high blood pressure? But it was stress.
Okay,
And
now you just
yeah, it was stress.
you're just pushing me more in the direction of retirement next year.
Okay.
Say that your coaching on this work has focused on chronic illnesses. So you've disclosed some of your own. Are there any other chronic illnesses that you focus on, or is it pretty much you just open it up to anyone who's diagnosed with something that's chronic?
Well, blood pressure is something else that I focus on, and sometimes cancer, because I've had a scare with that as well. And my mom is a cancer survivor.
Okay. And your experience is that, yeah, this is all your experience. We're not going up against medical science, but, one's experience is incredibly important. So you've changed habits about how you address these issues in terms of diet and exercise. Talk about that.
Yes. Yeah, just like there's a lot of things, like a lot of unclean foods out there, like pork, and because the people
we're gonna get into that later. Wait.
Okay.
We're gonna get into pork later on.
Okay. And in seafood,
I got a whole section on pork.
And in seafood, of course, that has a lot of cholesterol, and also anything like crabs and shrimp, they're scavengers. And so if they're eating, well, they're called the garbage men of the earth. So if they're a garbage man, what are you eating when you eat that?
Okay, this is getting good. So we're getting deeper. By good, I mean deeper. So I have a couple of friends who swear by seafood. They'll say, I don't eat meat, I just eat seafood. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, if they're talking about fish, then it's fine. But if you're talking about the crab or the scallop, anything that's like considered a scavenger, and catfish, because catfish don't have scales, but anything that has scales generally is good. And long as
Okay, so then
as long as it's
no, finish.
as long as it's not farm raised, but as long as it's like wild salmon, that's good for you because that's a good fat. But and it has scales. Anything that scales that's not farm raised is something that I would eat. Let me put it that way.
Okay, no, that's helpful. And so, but I thought that salmon, they're kind of at the bottom as well, aren't they? Don't they kind of run around the bottom of the ocean as well?
They don't. I don't think they eat. They don't eat. They don't eat garbage like a catfish.
I like that clarification. Oh no, catfish is next level. It's so much a part of our history. I mean, it's easy fishing, and so in the South, it's been a staple. Now I'm gonna dovetail into the faith aspect of what you do, and talk about how faith and nutrition have come together for you. What do they have to do with each other?
Well, faith is have faith that you can, have faith and live well. Live well meaning, you do the right things for your health, and have faith that you can achieve your health and wellness goals. Because I've come across clients that because they have failed in the past, they feel like they're going to fail in the future. But you have to look at, well, what have you done in the past, and how did that work for you? So basically, you've heard the saying that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. So, try something that's different and you'll get a better outcome, but don't set yourself up for failure. So that's where the faith comes in.
Okay. Okay. And in your personal life, has that taken more of a direction of a religious focus? Is it more spiritual, and how does that guide you?
Um, I guess um I guess it is more spiritual. Like I see that as a way of life. I don't really say it's a religion per se. I just say it's more of a way of life.
What do you think about people who are more highly religious but live in contradiction and judge others as a result of that? It sounds like that's not your vibe.
No, that's not my vibe. I mean, there are a lot of people out there like that. And maybe at one point I was like that, but I've learned as I've got older that you let your life be your testimony. Like people look at how
Mm.
you're living. Because you could go around quoting scriptures all day, but if you're not living those scriptures, it doesn't mean anything. But if people see that you're practicing what you're preaching, you're walking the walk, talking the talk, then people can say, yeah, she's really, she's not a hypocrite. She's true to what she's speaking about.
I appreciate that so much, so much. In the era of the conservative Christian, and so much judgment flying, and people presenting scriptures in defense, and then literally contradicting that with a level of hate it's unbelievable, because it's on social media, so you see it all the time. We can't get away from it.
Right,
How do you
exactly.
get right? So how do you battle that when you say that you are faith based? Do you come up against people who want to question you and just see if it's more of a religious, um, not just, I don't want to say cult, but kind of cult. You know how religiosity can be just, if you
Right.
don't, dogmatic. How do you get beyond that in what you present to people so they know you're not that person?
Well, basically just focusing on the health, just more on the health. Like this is basically if you're eating all these wrong foods and you have diabetes, you have swollen feet, and you're just all jacked up. And
Mhm.
so basically, okay, well, how is, if you're following all of this stuff, how is that working for you? And if it's not, okay, maybe you need to change your approach. So it's more on the
Okay.
focus of this is good for you, you know, keeping our temples clean, not just putting anything in our temples. And while we're walking around, feeling the way we're feeling.
I think that's such a hard one for people, particularly cultures who congregate around food, and as a part of enslavement,
Mm-hmm.
making meals. I mean, this day it's such an important part of our culture, not just our culture. Well, any collective meals, preparation, all that, such a huge part. And what comes to mind is what legacy is left in terms of food. Um, how do you work with people on that? Because yes, it's simple, but then it's not just habit; it's also kind of ties into belief. How do you manage that?
Well, back in slavery, they gave us the leftovers basically. While they, and that's kind of, and I guess some of us have that slave mentality, never able to get away from that, like just eating those intestines and just leftover stuff instead of just getting you a nice. And it's also how you cook it too. Like chicken isn't bad for you, but it's all on how you cook it. It's all about the preparation of the food. Like, okay, some people, I know you've seen this, they put salt on food before they even taste it. But if you there are a lot of things you can use as alternatives to salt. You don't have to put salt in your food to make it taste good. There are other things that you can put in there. So it's just finding alternative ways to make food taste good and also make it in a healthy way. But I know some of us just get caught up in what, well, our ancestors did that, or and they survived, but
Mhm.
things are changing now with GMOs, and just everything is different now than when it was back then. Back then, people probably grew their food more so, and now we have processed foods and people just heat and eat type of thing. So it's all on how it's prepared, and things are not the same as they were 50 years ago.
Do you believe the same thing about chickens in terms of how they're raised? Because I'll tell you what stopped me from eating chicken. I was driving a truck once, and it was packed with chickens, and I was like, okay, now chicken's off my plate. That visual, to this day, I can pull that visual up in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say eating meat is a choice, and I would say with chicken, I would say, I know for me, you look for something that's antibiotic free.
Do you feel the same way about chicken and cows that are more of a what is it? Farm? What is it called? Farm raised? How do they say that?
Farm raised, yes.
Yeah.
That's more just used to talk about fish usually, but cows eat grass. So if you're feeding cow anything other than grass, then I'm like, that's a question mark. And because you'll see, because I just listened to something on YouTube where the guy said, I just only eat grass-fed beef because that's what cows eat is grass.
Grass-fed, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you feel the same way about chicken? Grass-fed?
Chicken is more so no antibiotics added to it.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah, because I think there was something out that they were giving chickens antibiotics so they could grow faster.
Yes.
But
yes,
if in fact making the chickens too heavy for their legs, they couldn't stand up on their legs. So they were just trying to make money quicker, but you're harming the chickens by making them grow faster.
Wow. I do remember that. But since the plug's been pulled on that, don't you think people are more aware of that or not?
I think people are more aware, but then I think too it's a cost issue. Like, of course, now you see everything so very, very expensive. So sometimes people they can't afford it because it's always been more expensive to eat healthy, but now it's just more expensive to eat. Period. So you have to just pick and choose. For some people, what they want to eat.
That makes so much sense.
True. Yeah, I don't necessarily. I still shop the same way. I read food labels, so I don't skip on that. I still eat the same way in spite of the price. I just have to kind of shop at different stores because some stores are, you might can find something cheaper at Wegmans than you can at Giant or wherever you choose to shop. You just have to shop around and get the best deals. Clip coupons.
Yeah, coupons. Yeah, I used to love those shows about how people shop with coupons. That's fascinating to me. Talk about SMART goals. You use SMART goals with your clients and your coaching practice. Will you talk about that a little bit? Explain what that is.
Well, SMART goal, just something that's sensible, like that's realistic, basically, and something that's attainable. That you can, like, usually a client will set a goal. Like, say if they want to lose 15 pounds and then they have a set time, that they want to lose the weight. Yeah, because all your goals have to be time manageable and attainable and sensible.
So your focus
and realistic.
So it's helping them to set them, or do you kind of give them your input?
Well, it's more so guiding them because at the end of the day, they have to be the one to set the goal. I don't want to be the one to say, hey, do this, but they have to want to be able to set the goal. Like most clients that come to me, they know what they want. Like, hey, I want to lose weight, maybe to get into a wedding. I'm getting married in 6 months. I want to be able to get into my dress or whatever the case may be. Or, hey, the doctor says I have pre-diabetes. I need to lose some weight. So they kind of have an idea of where they want to go with their, where they want to go with their goals and of being healthy and more fit. Sometimes it's just a matter of being more active, whatever it may be. So it's ultimately up to the client to make that, to make their choices about the goal. I'm only merely there to guide them. I like to say a GPS, you know where you want to go, and I'm just there to guide you to get there.
Okay, I got a good one for you. So I have friends who talk about that. They want to do it, and they don't tell themselves the truth. It's like, this is jacked up. how do you manage that? Because you could be looking at someone and tell them, you're not eating as well as you think you're eating. You're not doing everything you think you're doing. How do you get past that? Because there is some quality testing. I would call that as a therapist.
You just have to ask the right questions. Like, I guess maybe like, how do you feel after you eat a certain food, or what do you eat during the day? Do you change up on the weekend? It's kind of like, how do you feel when you eat that? Or you just have to ask those right questions. And then sometimes you ask that right question, and it's like, boom. Then it's like, wow, that's it. They might be like, wow, that's, they'll figure it out. Hey, sometimes, oh man, that's what it is. Like, yeah.
So I would imagine, like, as a therapist, we often ask the same question again in different ways, and when it clicks, it clicks. It's like you're saying, it's sort of like an epiphany that it's not necessarily thinking about it different. It's just like the pathway opens up or something.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense.
you can be like I had mentioned, I was in denial for a while about my blood pressure, but once I realized, oh, it was stress. Oh, I took it more seriously.
You just keep throwing that one in my face, huh? The stress.
Well, no, I mean that was my story.
No, but tell me my story, and I hear you, Cassandra. I'm hearing you there. Actually, like Kevin said, different things you try to deal with specific things. For example, my idea of was juicing, and I would juice greens. Greens were my thing, and I love spinach. I love kale. I love beets. That was my main juice for I don't know how long. And then I developed kidney stones, and they were like, okay, now you have to go on what is it? I forget what it's called, but basically eliminated beets and spinach and kale.
Oh.
And it can be so frustrating when the things you think that are working for you are going on the right track. But like Kevin said, you really have to just keep testing it, right? Because like at any time, something can turn on you that you thought was working, and you become so committed to it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You could think you're doing, like someone that's, I think someone say if you're talking to someone that has high blood pressure, then they start eating a lot of pasta, and then they develop pre-diabetes because they're trying to avoid salt, and then they eat something else that's not, everything in moderation. You eat a variety of things, everything in moderation. Yeah. So don't overdo one thing.
Yeah, that's really important. Okay, let's talk about the bog coast. So, pigs are my favorite animals. I used to have a potbelly pig, and I think there's a lot of I think there's a lot of misconceptions that go around about pigs. And I hear what you're saying. One of the things you said is that pigs are not good for your health. I'm looking at your post now. They're not good for your health. Like they'll eat garbage. But I mean, as omnivores, which we are, we'll eat anything too if we're starved. Fair to say?
Yeah, yeah. Some of us will. It all depends.
Right. Okay. So I think what happens with pigs and people is like people don't appreciate how smart they are. I mean, they have the intelligence of a 3-year-old, and they're smart. But again, just like you said about how animals are raised, I mean, I don't want to eat them anyway because I think they're adorable and I love them. I just mean in terms of how people view them, more about the fact that what has been done to them. And I appreciated the part you said they don't have sweat glands and what happens with that. There are aspects about the pig that are dangerous for us just because of how they're raised. Right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I did talk to a lady one time that said she, because of how I guess they were beaten or something, and so that turned her off from eating pork. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's all on your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I just think they always try to say the other white meat, pork. Yeah, I don't know about that. There's a lot of challenges to that to that marketing. You probably agree with that.
Yeah, and I know for me, basically I stopped eating that, and my health became better after I stopped because it, has a lot of salt, sodium. So yeah,
Yes.
it was better for my health that way. Not that it didn't taste good, but
Yeah.
it just wasn't good for me.
And the other thing is that you're right. I mean, can you get saltier than bacon? And people can't get enough of bacon. And the
Right.
salt alone, right?
Right. Even though they
Seems
make
hugely problematic in most sides.
yeah, even though they make beef bacon and turkey bacon, but there's still some salt there. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So I take it you don't go find a good barbecue anywhere to. Just kidding. So you mentioned this before, and I just want to go back to that. You said, financially, eating healthier, it is more difficult for people who live in poverty. How do you navigate that with people? How do you? I know it's about shopping around, but sometimes people are working 3 jobs. They don't know how to do it. How do you provide the encouragement? What's the lens that you offer for encouragement?
I guess, just think about what your budget is, and then more so on, okay, what vegetables do you like? And and then sometimes, you can get frozen vegetables, they don't cost that much. And then I know with canned food, canned food has a lot of salt in it, but they make some that don't have salt.
So it goes back to the labels.
Yeah, you got to read the labels on, how much, because yeah, actually, I was telling a friend this that because she has a host of health problems. So I said, well, what type of food, and what type of food do you buy? She said, well, a lot of canned food, and I eat out. I'm like, well, eating out is another thing because that can be expensive for one thing, and then you don't know what you're getting when you're eating out.
Yeah,
Unless you
that's
ask,
a good point.
hey, what's in this? Because you don't know sometimes unless you ask. Like you go to it's one restaurant I went to and it was potato soup, but it had bacon in it. So of course I didn't get it. But you have to ask these questions like what is this in here? And you just have to know what's in your food. So if you're cooking, because I also stress this to clients as well, cook your own food. So that way you know what you're getting, because it is cheaper to go to the grocery store than to be eating out all the time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, it's about priorities, and also understanding budget is really important. A lot of people, go for fast, right? And then they don't consider the cost of fast in more ways than one. I was in another type of client to you. So there's the client who is convinced they eat well, and they don't have high blood pressure, they don't have high cholesterol, but they're challenged by their weight, and they want to lose weight. Nobody's telling them you have to lose weight, but they want to lose weight. How would you approach that client?
Well, I would say for that client, it's portion size, because that it sometimes is all about your portion size. Like you could eat healthy, but then if you're eating your portions are large, then you're not going to really lose the weight.
Yeah, it's also time of the day. Agree?
Well, I know I had a dietitian at one time that told me it didn't matter if you eat late, as long if you're eating something healthy. If you're eating like a burger and fries at 10 o'clock at night, probably not so good. But if you're eating a salad at 10 o'clock at night, it's fine. So I would say, yeah, it's more about what you're eating.
I appreciate that. That's a wonderful reframe. It's those kind of hard, right? Don't eat past 8 p.m. You're starving the next day. Appreciate that. So what have you wanted your children to know growing up that you didn't know? How are you teaching them differently?
Can you repeat the question? You were kind of in and out.
Yeah, no problem. I'm wondering how you raising your children knowledge, what that you can have access to.
Well, I talked to my son about what is healthy, and he's very picky anyway, so he only drinks water, and he doesn't eat candy. So, and he doesn't eat a whole lot of meat really either. So it's more of having because he watches everything that I do. So I just have to make sure that I am presenting an example of what to eat. And I know when he goes to school, he wants to eat with his friends. He's like, because I used to pack him lunch. Now he's like, well, he wants to eat the school lunch because his friends are eating it. So, but I say, but he knows that not to eat pork or anything like that. He doesn't like fish, so it's kind of, if he sees it at home and he's taught it, then I think it should carry it over. But I know he's going to eat what he wants to eat probably when he gets around his friends.
You bring up a good, not a good point, but a big issue, really, which is school lunches and how they go against so much of what is healthy in the family. And then kids get a taste for it, and it is hard to shake it, right? But I also like what you say about, but I think what you say is really important. Is like what you role model at home, is going to be more deeply ingrained and eventually, hopefully, weighs out.
Right. Because
So
my husband wasn't actually. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no. Go ahead, finish what you're saying.
Because my husband wasn't raised. He was raised to eat meat. He didn't eat meat growing up.
Wow. Did he start later on?
Yeah, he eats. We just saying he eats chicken, but with chicken he doesn't eat it after a day. But he'll eat beef, but he doesn't eat pork or shrimp or anything like that.
Man, I always want to talk to people who are raised without eating meat. I'm so fascinated by that, and what the change was. Like, what was the catalyst for switching over? Was it meeting you?
Well, he was raised as a Seventh-day Adventist,
Oh,
so
okay.
they don't eat meat. So, and then when he got older, he just said, okay.
Yeah, just switched it up. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate this conversation on health and how to eat healthy, um, and chronic illness. I don't think people think of high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol as chronic illness, but it really is. And so I love that framework that you use, and I love um, the idea of people considering how's that working for you. That's one of my favorite things in therapy is, yeah, how do you feel afterwards in terms of eating is your lane, but my lane is how do you feel emotionally afterwards. So I think it's an excellent reflection, except for people who are in denial and believe they feel fine afterwards. And then it's
Yeah.
a bit more of a challenge. But please tell everybody where they can find you, get more of your wellness advice and support.
Well, you can go to my website at havefaithandlivewell.com. I'm also on Facebook. I have a free Facebook group called Organically Reversing Chronic Illnesses. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay. Say the name of the Facebook page again.
The Facebook group is called Organically Reversing Chronic Illnesses.
Okay. I want to make sure everybody got that. Are you on Instagram at all or no?
Yeah.
Say it again. Instagram.
Yeah. I guess it's CASSANDR 1974. That's my.
Okay, cool. That's the Insta. Okay. Sorry about the connection. It's a little bit crazy today, but I appreciate the conversation. And another part of decolonization that I'm really enforcing is the idea of wellness in our bodies also being a part of decolonization, right? Leaving things that have held us hostage behind and not made us well, and deciding to do that differently. We have to consider all aspects, our mental, physical health, but also our well-being and how connected that is to every other aspect, and spirituality, how that's a bridge. Cassandra, thank you so much for coming on. Again, I just really appreciate all that you have shared and have to offer. And I want to make sure everybody got your handles so they can find you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, JD, for having me. It was great. I enjoyed the conversation.